So congratulations on having the Girly Pop EP come out. Obviously you've released music in 23 and it was well received, but this is like the first EP, so it's a big deal. So I guess I'll just start with the obvious question. Obviously you're already famous for TikTok and your activism and your awesomeness and all that, but what made you want to get into music at this point, a few years into your fame?
Yeah, I am so grateful for my time on TikTok and all the things I was doing before. And it's definitely such a pivotal, moment in my career that really made me blossom. But I will say music was always the goal for me.
Oh,
Growing up, I was a little like Broadway baby. I loved musical theater. I was in every choir, every band, orchestra, like you name it. Music was just really my lifeline forever. And I definitely like had stumbled into like the TikTokification of it all and made a really fun career out of it. But, I got to a point where I was like, this is fun and I love it, but I still always wanted to do music as well. And it just felt like it was really time to go back to my roots and back to like what really made Chrissy Chrissy. And that's why I began it again.
what were your musicals that you loved growing up or that you were in? Like my favorite's Hedwig, but I'll let
Oh, great one.
the best.
Yeah, my favorite show I ever performed was like basic, but it was Les Mis. That was like senior year of high school. Like, come on, the drama of it all. Like, I was obsessed.
I'm interested because, in reading other interviews or things about you, you've talked about feeling I don't know if the word is bullied, but you awkward in high school as many of us do. And like was theater something you turned to like find your friends, your community? Because a lot of, if you watch Glee or whatever, a lot of like kids did that in high school when they felt kind of like, like they didn't fit in anywhere else.
Totally. Yeah. I think the only place I felt comfortable, honestly, was like in a practice room or in the choir or in musical theater. I honestly was so fairly like I was shy. I was an extremely shy person. I was extremely insecure. And
Hmm.
the only moments I had really felt like I could connect with myself or like my higher self was when I was making music. And I think, getting a little older after high school really, you know, finding that feeling and being like, how do I take that feeling into like every day? How do I walk with this every moment of my life? I really embodied that. And I think, music is really the reason I am the way I am today, which is phenomenal. And I am grateful for the moments in high school where I was brave enough to, audition for things and be myself in those spaces because I really did feel on top of the world. I really did feel famous in my own way.
So obviously, like I said, most people, at least at the moment, know you as a TikTok star. So, but when you started doing music, like kind of right out of the gate, the press was very accepting of it and positive. You were on, like I'm looking here, Rolling Stone called you brightest pop stars to watch of 23. People put you at number 4 on their talented emerging artists for this year. I mean, are you surprised by that? Because I imagine there might have been some concern that people would be like, oh, this TikTok chick, like we can't take her seriously as an artist, but that doesn't seem to have been the case so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was very pleasantly like surprised that the feedback was very great. I will say too though, like I think because like and I'm not saying this at all the other TikTokers, like I know there's many talented, amazing people. It's not me trying to like dunk or anything. It's just that knowing like my history with music, I was like, I know what I do is going to be good. I know like my artistry is going to be good. And like I also do realize that my artistry is very like niche and like campy and comedic. And like I think I was very accepting of the fact that like maybe this point in my career today, people may not like fully understand it, but I have like every faith that like in a couple years or even like tomorrow that people were going to be like absolutely dying over it. So it was very affirming to get that kind of feedback so early on. And, you know, I do believe like I'll be able to live up to that because I do feel so strongly about what I'm doing and I'm proud of it.
As you should be. I want to ask you you mentioned the campiness or whatever. You obviously have songs like I'm so pretty, or I'm really pretty, I'm so hot. And I'm curious about why you've kind of gone, at least in a couple songs, with that motif, because honestly, like usually when women big up themselves, they get haters. It's supposed to be like, that's what makes you beautiful, like, oh, you don't know
Yeah.
you're pretty,
Oh yeah.
which, I love One Direction, no diss on One Direction, but like,
We
you know,
love.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not really like, maybe in hip hop, it's like in vogue to like sort of big up yourself and say I'm great, but usually when women act confident, they get kickback for that, clapback for that. So tell me a little bit about the fact that you're owning that in your lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, you are 100% right. I have gotten lots of feedback that has not been necessarily positive about, my choice of lyricism.
Oh,
Um, which, also though, I just kind of sit on the side of why does it matter so much that like a woman, a hyper feminine queer person is sitting here and is just like, I'm hot, I'm pretty. Like, is that really like what we want to focus on? Like, that's what like is going on in the world that we're so pissed off about? Like, also like it's just very interesting how you're so right. Like you have to like undermine yourself. You have to like put yourself down a little bit and be like, no, I'm nothing. I'm not this. I'm not that. And it's like, I'm the whole world. What are you talking about? Like, and you are too. And I think that like with my trajectory online as well, like that has always been what I've been trying to get across is that like there is so much beauty, obviously, other than outer beauty, but like, why not embrace all those types of beauty? There's beauty in our identities, in our queerness, in the way we walk through the world, in our own experiences. And it can be just as simple as saying, I'm really pretty or I'm so hot. And there's truthfully nothing wrong with that there in any aspect at all. And it is interesting the amount of hate I got after I had released I'm Really Pretty. It turned into a very huge online argument where I was like, I think you guys are completely missing the point of one, everything I'm saying in the song, and two, everything I've been saying forever. But I also think sometimes people like to backpedal on like what they love about women or if they hate them very easily at a flick of a dime. So
yeah, it reminded me of, I don't remember where I read this, but there was someone did it, a woman did an experiment when she was probably on Tinder. Like anytime a guy, messaged her by being like complimenting her physically, like, oh, you have beautiful eyes or something, instead of her, she would like agree with them. She'd be like, oh, thank you. I love my eyes. I love my eye color. And almost every time the guy would be like, well, screw you, bitch. Like, why you think you're all
right,
that? And she's like, but you just told me I'm pretty. I'm just, it's like very weird.
right.
I read a quote that one of my favorite drag race queens ever, Bimini, from the one of the best drag race seasons ever, UK season
Love.
2. They said they called you part of a new wave of women subverting the male gaze by playing up the bimbo stereotype on camera while asserting their own feminist politics. Go Bimini. And I thought that was interesting because I guess maybe it comes down to the fact, I'm sure you have lots of thoughts on this, that people assume that when women try to look attractive or are pretty, whatever, when they do their hair or put on makeup, whatever, that it's for men, not for themselves or for any other reason, but to like attract men. So if men don't like it, then it's no good. And I'm sure you have
Mhm.
lots of thoughts about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating. I know right now I'm a little like I have my like kind of natural makeup on right now, but most of the time like I view the stuff I do and the way I dress within makeup and fashion and music, like I view that as a form of drag. Like, and men don't like drag. Also, men don't like hyper femininity. Like that, there's so much queerness coded into also like extreme hyper femininity that is not attractive to men, regardless. And also, regardless, it is so impossible to walk through the world as a woman or really anyone without everyone thinking what you're doing is catering to men. Like, why is our conversation always solely around what a man is going to think about it, other than like, how do we feel about it? Like, how does this make me feel in my body? Do I feel confident today? Do I feel like myself today? Do I feel like I have gotten the chance to express who Chrissy is or whoever you are today? Like, the conversation itself around these things always just turns to men, which is just so backwards in my opinion, because it's just completely leaving out the woman or the person in a general sense where we can't even direct our attention towards ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with directing attention towards yourself as well. And I also think that the conversation unfortunately feeds so difficultly into like rape culture as well, because it turns into a whole like, well, what were you wearing? Were you asking for it? Was it this? Was it that? And in my head, I'm like, oh, didn't we want to get away from that? But every time I now show up as the way that I do and be the person I am, it's always like, oh, see, like, look what she's wearing. She's the reason this happens. She's the reason that happens. And I'm like, whoa, actually, the reason these things happen are because men make it happen, not because I decided to wear a crop top today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, the point you made about men not liking hyper femininity because yeah, there's a thing called makeup shaming where guys like say, oh, let take a woman on our first date to go swimming so we can see what she
Yeah,
really looks like or whatever. And it's weird because men will complain about us taking a long time to get ready for a date or whatever, when it's like we've been told all our lives that we need to look pretty for men, but like basically we're just supposed to roll out of bed looking like this. Like we're not supposed to, you know, it's like,
yeah,
okay, look pretty, but don't spend time doing makeup or don't have plastic surgery, don't dye your hair or don't do anything else you could do to look attractive. Like
exactly.
literally just look like that wake, because that's vain. Vanity, yeah, is a thing that is frowned upon. There's a lot of layers
Right.
to this.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm like, we could talk for hours on this alone. It's layered, it's deep, it's crazy.
Well, obviously you've talked a lot about this on your TikTok and stuff. I mean, obviously a lot of people who'll be watching this will already know about this. For the people who don't, though, like the whole like bimbo feminism, it's interesting to me the word bimbo is even used because to me that's kind of like an old fashioned word, like what like my grandpa would use to like harlot, like just a word that doesn't get used that often. But tell me a little bit because you sort of talked about stumbling into that, and then you sort of became this pioneer of like let's do the what is it called? Bimbo Talk 101. How you kind of became the queen of that.
Yeah, I mean, really what had happened, like the arc of it all was that I had just started posting online being silly and like just being like authentically Chrissy, and it was getting a lot of attraction, which was super fun and like funny, and it was like cool that like people thought I was like humorous, etc. And then I had gotten a comment from my now one of my best friends, Griffin Maxwell Brooks, who also was part of the Bimbo movement with me. They had commented bimbofication on one of my posts, and I was like, that's funny. And one thing about me is that I love a bit. I think it's like the theater girl in me. Like I will like take a bit and I will like run as far as I can. And that's kind of what sparked this, where I was like, obviously they were not saying that in a way that was supposed to be derogatory or anything. It was like it was said in a way that was like celebratory. And so I was like, wait, this is a very interesting take that I can like go with. And also it was like the things I was saying before were absolutely like self-love centered and like wear what you want and everything. And I was like, all right, what would happen if I like combined these two things? And that's where like Bimbo 101 came from. And it was definitely like playing into a shtick and playing into the stereotype that honestly I've gotten like my whole life. Like it wasn't just like the bimbo thing. It was like dumb blonde. It was like she like just I've always been also extremely like feminine and like played with makeup and stuff. And I've been heavily judged for that throughout like middle school, high school, stuff like that, where it was just like fun for me. It was like my way of, diving into my world of drag as an adult now. And so I took that, I created this video that, of course, played into this character and also had a lot of like, I feel like very great ideals and very good points that I was trying to get across. And it was really just like the juxtaposition of like, this like silly, dumb girl saying these like actually very smart things. And it was more just like supposed to be centered around like no matter what somebody looks like or how they present themselves or walk through this world, like they have something to offer and they probably have good views as well. And what that was mainly what I was trying to get across with a character, because at the end of the day, I'm a theater girl and I needed to create and wanted to create this character surrounding it. And that's where it started and like where it had gone. And I would say now, like the bimbo character is definitely with me. And I think she's carried into, aspects of entertainment with my music videos and like the humorous stuff that I do there. Like it's really just like the cheeky side of Chrissy that's kind of always like wink wink mixed with the things that I really care about, whether it's music or whether it's politics or really whatever it is on the spectrum. It's just my way of representing myself and sharing my views with the world.
Well, we could talk about this, what I'm about to ask now, for a very long time too. But, you know, the idea of feminism, people have different ideas of what that is. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you've gotten flack for basically some people saying that your version of feminism is taking the movement back, or isn't feminist, or is whatever. And, you know, a lot of people have different ideas of feminism based on their age, their politics. Like I was talking to a woman I know who's like in her 70s, and she was like, "Oh, I'm not a feminist, but I believe that women should be treated equal, and like, you know, women should get equal pay and blah blah blah." And she was saying all these things. I'm like, "Well, then you are." And she's like, "No,
Right.
but I like men," because her generation was taught that feminists were man haters, you know. So there's
Hmm.
different ways that feminism can go, but I'm sure there's people who have said the way you present or anything about you is doing it wrong. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Like, what does feminism mean to you, and how has it evolved to like kind of the way you do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think feminism is such a like broad word. And so I guess that my version of feminism, or my version of the way people critique my feminism, is that like I I think there are spaces for people to be hyper feminine and hyper queer and show those things about them to the world, and they should be able to do that safely, and they should be able to do that in a way that doesn't put a target on their back. And I think the critique that I have gotten, which I strongly disagree with, is that the way that I'm dressing or the way that I'm presenting myself is putting a target on my back, and it's ruining it for me and for this person behind me and the next woman and the next person. And I would say that like I absolutely refuse to believe that any moment I am being promiscuous, or I am, being larger than life, or I am embracing who I am. I refuse to believe that that is one centered towards men. I refuse to believe that because of that I am now a victim to men and that I deserve to be. I think it is extremely backwards and almost puritanical to be putting these expectations onto women about how we're supposed to look and dress and act and walk and what we're supposed to say and do and not mess up. It just like I feel like 3 years ago when I was doing this, people really understood what I was saying. And now 3 years later, people are completely backpedaling.
Oh,
And I find it people, and not everyone, I think just from like the critiques I've been getting, I'm noticing people backpedaling about it. And it's quite frustrating because I feel like it's putting, again, women in boxes, which means you're excluding all types of women, like hyper feminine women, like queer women, women of color, trans women, disabled women. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on because you're creating this version of what a perfect woman has to be. And I'm like, where are we? Like the 1800s? And when you put women in boxes, what are we all doing? What we're sitting in a fucking box. Like we're not. And what's the problem above us? The men and the patriarchy and the ways that we are not deciding to work together, and the ways that we are pointing fingers at each other in a loop while nothing happens. And it's quite frustrating because I believe like my version of feminism is so inclusive, and it is accepting of all types of women and people and queerness and really whatever. Like it's just fluid. It's not supposed to be so like rigid. And I feel like right now I'm getting put in such a rigid box of like, this girl is wrong, this girl is bad, what she said doesn't make sense, and X, Y, and Z. And really all I was saying was like, I want us to be ourselves. I want us to celebrate ourselves and whatever that is, and however that is, and however you do it, you aren't a target. And however you do it, you should feel safe. Like that was the whole point of it. And I could go on for hours about it, but
well,
I guess in that way.
I'm curious. You know, I picked up on you saying that 3 years ago you thought the messages you were sending out were being received. What's happened in the last 3 years where you feel the backpedaling's happened? Like, why do you think that is?
um, I think, well, one, I think I've seen multiple times people switch up on women very quickly, just like they love what they're doing, and then everyone decides to like dogpile and be like, actually, fuck them for like no reason. And I see this quite primarily in women who make music. And it was around the time I started making music. I mean, the conversations around women in pop music are so extremely vulgar and disgusting, in my opinion, in the way that people find access to feeling like they have access to our bodies or our autonomy or just every little bit of our lives. Like I've just watched the way people speak about like Ariana Grande and like what's going on in her life, or the switch ups they'll do with like other women on the internet, other women in
Je-
pop.
Jennifer Lopez right now is getting it really hard.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like that. And it's also like none of these women have really done, like, I guess, like, say Ariana Grande, for example, like, what has she done that's that horrible that she deserves this giant hate train? Like, it's her personal life. And I guess just like in what I guess I'm trying to say with it is that I just noticed the conversations around women who make music are a lot worse than just like sometimes people online. And so
Hmm.
I feel like when I entered music and then my music started saying like I'm so hot and I'm really pretty, which is exactly what I've been saying before. Like if you were here from the beginning, for some of these people who are pissed off, you would know the conversation just completely went on its head and turned into like a hate train of Chrissy and like a, oh fuck her, I hate that she's doing this and da 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 da, which like whatever. I'm also in the like I'm like they'll come back. Like it's not that big of a deal to me, but it is very interesting. And that's what makes me feel like, okay, like when I started changing the way I created and spoke about the things I care about is when people got mad. And I do think it's because people do treat women in the music industry like dummies that they can throw around and say whatever they want to because they don't really see them as real people.
And then yet you are continuing to put yourself out there. You're dropping, your first EP this week, I guess what keeps you in the face of all of this stuff we're talking about? Just you seem brave. I mean, you talk about being insecure and stuff, but you don't come across that way. What keeps you going and just pushing ahead?
I like what else is there to do? I guess like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I am like, and thank you for saying that. Like it feels nice to be told I'm brave, and I do feel like I am brave. I think like a lot of it stems from childhood and the way I had to be brave as a child, and I had to be brave as a young adult, and now like in my early 20s. I think one thing about me is I just like will always keep pushing, especially if it's something that I love and I believe in. And music is something that runs so incredibly deep and means so much to me on such a multitude of levels. Like to say like it truly saved my life is not like it's an understatement. Like it really is what keeps me going. And no matter how things are received right now, or no matter how many streams I get, or how many people understand what I'm doing, like I'm not going to stop because how many times has an artist who is wildly misunderstood 10 years later been understood finally? I mean, think of like Lady Gaga art pop era. Like no one got what she was doing at all then, and then 10 years later it like charted again and people were like, wait, this was ahead of
Yeah.
its time. Like
But Mariah Carey's Glitter,
yeah,
much of what Madonna's done, particularly the erotica era Madonna. I mean, that's a woman who's got shat on more than, despite all of her, obviously, or maybe because of all of her success, she's been shat on. But look
yeah,
look at her doing what she's doing. Um, do you mind? You talked about how you had to be brave as a child and as a young adult. Do you mind me asking about that, or
yeah.
um,
um
like I guess basically how did you develop that thick skin and why as a young girl?
yeah, I mean, there I had a lot of like family problems growing up and stuff, and a lot of that did allude to me being quite alone as a child. And not a lot of my life did I feel like there was many people like caring for me or watching over me. And in turn, it made me like learn how to do a lot of things alone. So I think with that, like growing up and like kind of figuring out, okay, how do I function through this world? Like, how do I, just exist as a human being without a lot of guidance? For one reason or another, it was brave of me. It was brave to like figure out a lot of adult things at like quite a young age. And, you know, so much I like think of my music career, and I think so much of the times I was like 5 to like 18 years old, like in my room. I would get home from school, I'd get home from rehearsal, I'd make sure I was at school like the longest possible because I didn't want to go home. And when I would go home, I'd immediately run to my room and I'd immediately turn on my like stereo, and I would just play this fantasy of like I'm a pop star today, or like I'm on Broadway. And that's like where I would train basically. That's where I like learned all of these really cool things about my voice, and I learned the things I loved about theater and the things I loved about pop music and the things I loved about myself. Like it was such a formative journey to honestly just be like stuck in my room, like learning how to make music and learning how to be myself and learning how to also like function through the world. And I think as a child, I was also like quite scared of a lot of the things going on around me, and had to face a lot of those as a child as well. And I think just like I'll always go back, like I said, like to the moments alone in my room where those were the things I was figuring out, but I was finding my bravery through singing and through music and through acting and dancing and creating these shows in my head. And now as an adult, like doing that on stage, it's like it's surreal, you know? It makes me feel like another level of brave. And the moments like before I go on stage and I'm nervous and I'm scared and I'm like, oh, how is this gonna go? I'm always like, okay, just pretend it's like you and your mirror, like it always has been. And yeah, I owe a lot of my artistry and the reason I'm kind of like I don't give a fuck, but like I give a fuck, but I don't give a fuck, like to the younger me. Because yeah, she didn't have a lot of guidance. She didn't have a lot of care, and I think she was like she was scared, but she figured out her way through it. And I think that's why now it's like as everything is going on right now, and I feel sometimes like, oh, does everyone hate me? Am I not doing anything right? I'm like, no, like I'm fine. I've felt this before. I felt this on a wilder level before as a child, and like now as an adult, I have the access of things I used to not. And I have the information and the bravery and the courage to just like keep being me and keep showing that to the world. And I love it now, and I know other people will understand it later.
I don't know what your relationship is with your family now, given all the things you just told me, but are you in touch with them? What do they feel about, have they given you any feedback about the fact that you've made this empire for yourself? Are they like, wow, you were right all along, or I don't know, we're proud of you? Any good stories like that?
Um, I mean, I'll say my brother Kevin is my best friend in the world. Like when I think of family, I think of him. He's my older gay brother. Like he's what taught me so much. He's what got me into musical theater. He's the reason I was able to accept my queerness and, figure that out in a safe way because he did it first. I owe so much to him, and I he's my best friend, and I know he's immensely proud of me and just is the light of my life. And it feels so good to think about all the times like him and I would go to each other's plays growing up, or like go in the basement and like record like TV shows and stuff like that. And then to see like where, I'm at now, it feels good. And I know like he's so proud of me. He's my biggest champion. And like that is really all that matters to me, like having his love and support. Because if anything, like if I want to prove anything to anyone, it's like him, I want to make him proud. And like, I'm really grateful to have done that so far.
I think it's interesting that there's a lot of people, if they've gone through any kind of trauma when they're young, they, like what we were talking about before, maybe they would minimize themselves or dim their light. Like a lot of people do kind of want to be invisible or become smaller, and you did the opposite. So, I mean,
Right.
which is rad. But like, is that how, like, do you have any insight into like why you went that route of going, hyper feminine, TikTok star, pop music, theater, all that, instead of sort of becoming more of the wallflower who just wanted to disappear, which is how some people process going through something, tough when they're young.
Yeah, I think there were like as a child, I think I definitely was like kind of the wallflower. Like I didn't want to be perceived very much. Like I would still experiment with like clothing and like makeup and stuff, but it was hard for me to be like perceived, I guess. Like I didn't like that feeling very much. I only liked it like on stage or like when I was singing in choir and stuff like that, like the spaces I felt the most comfortable. And then, I think yeah, there were lots of moments where I just tried to minimize myself and like, head down, like look small, like don't draw attention, don't X, Y, and Z. And I mean, I do know that like one of the catalysts to why I just kind of broke out of that was when I was like 18, 19, I was in a pretty like abusive relationship. And when I had like finally gotten the courage to end that and get out of that, I just basically was like, fuck this. Like I am so there, like I didn't blame myself for, of course, anything that happened. There's no reason to, but I was like, why am I making myself feel so small? Like, why am I allowing people to maybe treat me like this? Like, I just kind of had to like this like come to Jesus moment, I guess, where I was just like, this is not how I want to feel. It's not how I want to live my life. I want to be big. I want to be tough. I want to say like, screw this. I want to speak my mind. Like I want to say the things I've always wanted to, but I've been so afraid to because of the situations I had unfortunately been in. And from there, I had just gained all of this like confidence and respect for myself and also grace for myself for the things I had gone through and the ways I had been treated, which now has developed into the Chrissy that I know and and they're seeing today, which I I love her and we've got stuff to work on still, but like I'm honored to like be in the position where I am happy and I'm proud of myself and I'm like ready for the next, batch of work.
Awesome. Well, a couple last questions I have. One is, we talked a little bit about the online hate you got, but we got to talk about the online love. Like you
Yeah.
got to have some good stories about young people, queer people, girls who have just said, thank you. Like basically you're doing for them what maybe those pop stars you listened to in your bedroom did for you when you were a kid. Do you have any specific stories that come to mind about, or in general, just the good feedback you've gotten about the goodness you're putting into the world?
Yeah, I mean like gosh, it like makes me emotional to like think just I think sometimes I have such a hard time believing and like knowing that the things I say do make such an impact. Like, of course, I know that people like are receiving it well and stuff, but like when I've met fans like at shows of mine, like even this last show I just opened for Trixie Mattel at Stone
Oh,
Pony Summer Stage. Yeah.
I she just DJ'd at WeHo Pride on the same day that Kylie played here. I love Trixie. Actually, of all the Drag Race queens, I think she's making the most like really relevant pop music. No diss to any of the other queens, but like she's the one I see like
Mm-hmm.
really like kind of infiltrating the mainstream. But yeah, you got to open for her. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, you're good. She's amazing. Yeah, I got to open for her, which was like such a surreal experience. And afterwards, I, met up with some of my friends and I just started getting like kind of crowded around, I was like, whoa, like I don't know, sometimes I like forget that like people are perceiving me too. And because, we're here for Trixie. And I had just like so many fans come up to me and be like, I have been following you for years. Like, I love everything you're doing. I'm so proud of you, like seeing you follow your dream into pop. Like it just feels so nice getting that validation one and then also like hearing from them like I have heard a lot like you've really helped me like become myself and you've helped me like be proud of my queerness and proud of the person I am today and that's like the reason I feel like I do anything I do like I'm happy to do it because of course it fuels me and it fuels my inner child but like seeing that it like makes somewhat of a difference in somebody's life like that's like an irreplaceable feeling that I don't think I will ever like forget. Like every moment that happens, I feel that in my heart and in my body, and it's great because I do, yeah, like I think of like little me, like listening to Lady Gaga and being like, this is my mother. Like this is who I want to be. Like this is my guidance, you know? And like to think, although I'm on like a small scale, like to think maybe I'm that for someone, it's surreal because like I know how much that impacted me, and like I still feel that way today. Like I still credit like women like Gaga or Ariana Grande or even like my Broadway stars like Bernadette Peters for like why I'm me. And I don't know, like if I can be that person for someone, that means I'm doing something right. And like that's that's like success to me, I think.
You are doing everything right. You're awesome. I really enjoyed
Thank
speaking
you.
with you. Congratulations on everything, doing it your way. It's been really enlightening and wonderful to chat with you. Happy Pride
Oh,
Month and Pride Year.
yes, happy Pride. Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking your time to talk to me. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Chrissy. That means a lot. I appreciate you taking the time as well. I know you have a busy week. So congratulations on everything, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.